Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a psychotherapist. My name is Brooke Brigham, and I'm an attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm a therapist.
And today, we're here to talk about Britney Spears and the conservatorship that has been in the news.
And where we're at now today, because we've heard everything. Britney is definitely what's been going on with her. None of it's a secret by any means. It's out in the world and people are talking about it constantly. We really wanted to talk about it from the perspective of legally, how did she get into this conservatorship? How did this happen? Why did this happen? And where we are today and what we're seeing from Britney today, because what I really think what we're seeing with Britney now that post-conservatorship is someone who is battling with PTSD and trauma and trying to figure out how to get herself through it and process it. That's my take. But do you want to get into the conservatorship and what was going on at that time and what happened?
Yeah, so basically this was in 2007, 2008. Britney Spears had two children back to back. I think they're a year apart. She was having trouble with her husband, Kevin Federline. She had filed for divorce, I think maybe even before her second child was born.
Yeah, I think so.
And she was exhibiting some troubling behavior. Like she was photographed driving with her son Sean in her lap in the car, but she later explained that she was trying to get away from the paparazzi and she was just trying to get out of the way. And that, maybe let's start with the paparazzi. They just hounded her. They just hounded her. There's video footage of it. This one time she went into a 7-Eleven to try to use the bathroom and literally like 50 paparazzi came into the 7-Eleven and were hounding her. She couldn't even walk out. And that was how she was living her life.
Yeah.
She couldn't go out. Anytime she went out, there were 50 paparazzi waiting, following her. And it was a little Princess Diana-like. And then when she had her kids, she had these babies with her and then it just became unsafe. And so she was struggling probably with postpartum depression.
Yes.
Just being this person who's in a fishbowl and being harassed all of the time. Her marriage is falling apart and she's having basically a mental health crisis. And her family tried to help I don't know if this really helped, but She was involuntarily committed on a 5150, which is the California Welfare Institutions Code. 5150 allows the police to take you into custody if they believe you're a danger to yourself or others.
For 72 hours.
For 72 hours. And if they can't find a reason to detain you, they have to let you go. And it's pretty hard to keep someone.
Yeah. As someone who has gone to the hospital many times myself as part of my jobs and had to assess somebody, basically, you know, that person, if you were an adult over the age of 18 and you're saying, and I've seen both sides of this, if you're saying, I don't want to be committed, you cannot legally commit them. I can't, unless they show me that they have some sort of danger to self or others. But when you're meeting someone just in a hospital, all you have is what they're telling you. You don't have this long history. So even still, you know, what happens a lot of times, families get involved and they will get someone they might 5150 someone, and maybe their loved one will stay a day or two in the hospital. Maybe they'll do the 72 hours. But after that, they're released. And there's very little you can do once your child is an adult. They're an adult and they can make their own decisions. Parents are pretty powerless.
So yeah, she was having a major mental health crisis.
Yes.
And we all remember she shaved her head. She got into an altercation with a paparazzi and hit his car with an umbrella, which, I mean, seriously, in and of itself, people made such a big deal about that umbrella thing. Meanwhile, you have people like Alec Baldwin out punching photographers.
Sean Penn was punching photographers before it was a thing.
Hitting someone's car with an umbrella. Again, I know it always comes back to good old sexism.
Yeah.
You know, women are treated differently. They are not allowed to be angry. They are not allowed to be upset. If they are, then they're crazy. There's something wrong with them. She was, judged for her parenting so harshly, as women are always being judged. And this just all escalated and just spiraled out of control to the point where she lost custody of her two young sons. And she was just in a very bad place. And I think she may have been self-medicating, using substances. I don't know. But that was what her family was claiming. And so they did something that is very unusual. And they applied for, it was spearheaded, I think, by her father. I don't know how much her mother was involved. She's now blaming her mother for it. But anyway, they petitioned the court first for a temporary conservatorship. So what the law requires is that there's two parts of the conservatorship. There's the conservatorship of the person and of the estate. An estate basically just means your assets, your financial affairs. Conservatorship of the person basically strips someone of all of their autonomy. The conservator has the power to decide where they live, what medical care they get, whether or not they can get married, whether or not they can drive, whether or not they can do anything. And so it's very, very restrictive, obviously. And so you have to show that the proposed conservatee, Britney, is unable to properly provide for her personal needs for physical health, food, clothing, and shelter. And for the financial part, you have to show that she's substantially unable to manage her financial resources or to resist fraud or undue influence. And that was another thing. I think her family was very concerned about people getting their hands on her money when she's in this very bad state. And she had a former manager named Sam Lufty, who the family did not like. And I think they thought that he was just going to take all of her money. I think that, sadly, I think this was more financially motivated.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah.
Than
it was.
Anything else. So, they, as part of the process, they had to get a doctor to sign a declaration basically saying all these things. That she was unable to care for herself, blah, blah, blah. So they managed to get this, and it's extremely, extremely rare. Usually these conservatorships are for people who have dementia, Alzheimer's, extremely elderly, cognitively impaired, disabled. You don't see young, healthy people who can work. And of course, we know Britney can work. She worked throughout the entire conservatorship and made millions and millions of dollars. And it's just very unusual. Never have seen another case even remotely close to this. But somehow this happened, and I believe that behind the scenes that her family was using her children as a wedge to, keep her from protesting, get her to go along with this, whatever, not fight it, because she could have fought it in court, and I don't really think she did. I can't find any evidence, that there was any sort of contested hearing. I think she just let it go because they were holding her kids over her head. If she ever wanted to, she'd already lost custody.
Yeah.
If she wanted to have any kind of visitation or anything, she had to go along with the program.
Yeah. Well, I listened to the recent 22-minute audio that she put out, and I have to say, when you read the audio, it seems like she's very all over the place and scattered, and like reading one of her Instagram posts, but she sounds very clear, very calm, very straightforward. I think the best that I've heard her sound in a long time. And she gets into that, and she talks about what those first, how this all came about. And I really get the sense when I was hearing her talk that it was almost this thing of a dream, like, oh, okay, now I'm doing this. Okay. And now I'm here. And they had taken her to and made her go into this rehab facility for a couple weeks. And I think it was kind of like, okay, I'll just do this rehab thing and then I'll be out. Like, I think I got the sense, I could be wrong, but I got the sense in the beginning, it was almost like, okay, I think they probably told her, well, if you get to here, we'll let you go.
Right.
Or if you get to here, and I bet you anything, they said, well, if you clean up your act.
Yeah, they just kept moving the goalposts.
Yeah. If you clean up your act and you get it together, we'll let you out of this conservatorship, and you'll be able to see your boys. And then she talked about how there was one time where she pushed back about a dance move. It was just about a dance move. She pushed back, then someone found out that she was pushing back, and everything shut down, and she was off again into some facility, for another 2 weeks, and drugged up and all of that. So it was like every time she, pushed a little bit, it was like, oh, it's so bad. And this is what we do to people, this is what they do to prisoners. This is what you do to people in these kinds of, horrible marriages and relationships. Is the minute the person seems to be getting a bit of a backbone, you do something to punish them so much that they know never to do that again.
Well, and she was quite literally imprisoned by her father. I'll just say up front, her father committed just a complete abuse of his power, because the conservator, they have to use the least restrictive means to help the conservatee. So yeah, they're there to help them, but if whatever the conservatee can do for themselves, you have to let them.
Yes.
You can't just take away like any ability to do anything, which is what he did. He hired this security team. It was called Black Box.
Oh God.
Black Box something, which was a security team who basically kept her prisoner, like kept an eye on her. I feel like they just had, guards around the house. She couldn't leave. She couldn't drive herself anywhere. She couldn't have a cell phone. If she was able to use a cell phone, it was very restricted. They would block all kinds of things, so she couldn't get on Instagram and that kind of stuff. They would, if she went out in public, they would take her. She was never alone. She couldn't do anything. She really was a prisoner.
And she talked in this 22-minute thing about no one would believe me. And I think that's the thing. A lot of times you would think, well, you were performing on these stages. Couldn't you just say, hey, hello, I'm being held hostage. Someone help me. And I think that she felt like the world thinks I am. And I bet you anything, her father and all these people around her were feeding this. The world thinks you're crazy. The world thinks this. No one's going to believe you. You're not okay to take care of yourself. I mean, I think that these things happen, and they are very, very gradual. That's why I think that in the beginning, they created these parameters for her that were like made her go along with it until she realized, until she was brainwashed, or until she got to the point where she felt like, I have no power, no one's going to believe me, no one cares, which is why the Free Britney movement, I think almost gave her the confidence to say, oh, the world doesn't think I'm crazy.
Right.
Like, people do see what's going on here. People do care about me. I do have fans. So maybe I should speak up for myself.
Yeah, I think that she also said she was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, all these feelings of trying not to rock the boat. She doesn't want to do anything that will have her contact with her kids cut off.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, very much, like, so much manipulation going on. And yeah, it's almost like that Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
you know, you start to
Yes.
sympathize with your captors and you just go along with it. But yeah, she went on to have 3 or 4 #1 albums immediately
World
after
tours.
the same year the conservatorship was put in place. She dropped a #1 album, and then the next year,
And that was the thing. Those albums were doing well. So there was this belief in the culture and the zeitgeist was, see, Britney does need this. Like, this is a good thing. Her father interfering is a good thing. But none of us knew the extent at which she had no
Right,
life. I
'cause
think we thought she had a life.
Yeah.
I assumed she had a life.
because before that, all we saw was her on TV, you know, with her head shaved.
Yeah,
and
melting down.
And again, once again, horrible news coverage portraying her to be just out of control. Yeah, and then all of a sudden her father steps in and, oh, look, she's successful again. And everything's back to normal.
Yes.
But it was just all a facade.
Yes, yes. So one question that I keep trying to figure out is, I always read and heard that Britney was diagnosed with bipolar, but is that really even true? Because personally, I see now where I see what's going on with her now, and I'm like, well, this isn't mental. This is trauma. This is PTSD. This is something else. I don't know where this bipolar diagnosis
know.
got from, and I'm wondering if this is this fake diagnosis that the family was able to. But again, even if you have bipolar, that doesn't mean that you get into a conservatorship. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Well, if we put every person who had mental illness or substance abuse problems in a conservatorship, half the country would be.
yes.
I mean, you just don't do that to somebody. And yeah, we don't know because her medical records are all private, obviously. I've never heard of that bipolar diagnosis, but, you know, they could have found a doctor to say anything.
Yeah.
And clearly they did.
yeah. Which is and that's the part that's really surprising, is I've worked with, over the years, people who have had either a child or a sibling who is an adult but has a serious mental illness. And bipolar untreated can be very, very serious, because in the manic phases, people are incredibly impulsive. So that's usually where things start to go haywire. And they tried everything under the sun to try to get their loved one help, and they could not. So this is the part that is, I don't know if it was a combination of money or finding the right people, the right attorneys, but it wasn't just Jamie Spears. Like, Jamie Spears had to have gotten a doctor to sign off on this.
Right.
Got lawyers.
A judge approved
A
this.
judge. Like, it wasn't, he might be the train driver, but there were a lot of people that hopped on that train to support that. And basically, you know, violated her
human rights.
Her human rights.
They took away
But
all
also-
of her rights.
but
as a
also
person.
not only violating, you know, human rights, but breaking the law and breaking your oath. I mean, as a doctor, that, you know, all of these people that are part of this, the psychiatrist,
and her
all of them,
lawyer. You know,
Uh-huh.
she did have her own lawyer.
that was appointed by them.
I don't know if he was court appointed or found by her father. I'm not really sure. But my gosh, he sure did stand by and stay silent for 13 years. I don't know why he wasn't advocating more for
Because he
her.
was paid by, I think that was the issue. And so with this new judgment, with everything that's going on now, she got a new lawyer.
Right.
That was part of the issue, was that her lawyer was being paid for by, you know, was under the influence of whatever Jamie
Well,
Spears was doing.
I also heard in one of these documentaries, they were saying that maybe her lawyer was afraid to fight back too much because of like what you were talking about, like a retaliation. You know, if he pushes and he's pushing on her behalf, then it could come back to bite her and they could retaliate against her.
Yeah. But I think that's also, you know, some of it too is I think that Me Too and a lot of these movements have helped tremendously, right? That part of it was at that time in 2008, 2009, 2010, that people were we still had the same ideas. We weren't thinking, we weren't talking about the misogyny of what was happening to Britney, what was happening to these young women at the time. So some of this too is the Free Britney movement came about at the right time, you know, and maybe there have been people who correct me that have been trying to get her released for 13 years prior to all of this that, you know, weren't talked about. But having Me Too, having what's happened in our culture and all of that in the last 5 or 6 years helped tremendously to get her out of this.
Yeah, and also I was pretty surprised once that the New York Times did a documentary that it was called Framing Britney Spears. I don't really understand the name framing. I don't get it. But anyway, yeah, that documentary just got people so fired up, and I was very surprised how quickly it moved. Because one of the things about the law is that once the court makes an order, good luck trying to get it changed. You know, it's very hard to get any kind of order overturned, especially something where you're talking about custody or, you know, conservatorships, guardianships. That area, it's very, very hard once you're in it to get out of it. And the court actually moved pretty quickly. And I mean, I think because it was exposed to the world and people were outraged, you know, and the judge involved in, I would like to know more about this judge. You know, judge had to sign off on all of this stuff all along for all of these years. And so I was very surprised how quickly it just went away.
Yeah.
You know, they first made you know, her father stepped down as her personal conservator. And then eventually he was out altogether. And then, you know, just kind of step by step. But it kind of crumbled within a few months. And then she was completely free of it. And that's just kind of unheard of. Excuse me. It, you know, unless there's some dramatic thing, which was the whole Free Britney movement. Without that, she would probably still be.
Well, in many ways, you have to think about it like someone who's been falsely accused and then gets released from prison, right? Like, you know, this thing happens.
Well, that usually takes decades.
I know. Well, but this thing happens and then the person's released and there's this idea of, okay, they're released, here we go. And, you know, she's out on her own. And I think what we're seeing now is someone who is trying to figure out very much like how to be out on her own. You know, she's 40 years old. Her life's been controlled in many different ways for more than just the conservatorship years, but beforehand.
Yeah, ever since she became a celebrity.
And so I think what we're seeing right now is somebody who is just trying to figure out how to be in the world.
Yeah, she's very traumatized, obviously. And, you know, her growth is pretty stunted because she hasn't been living as an adult. Yeah. You know, for a very long time, if ever.
And so that's why when people criticize her just kind of standing there in her outfits and showing outfits and all this kind of stuff, and oh my God, it's a beautiful day and this and that. It's like, yeah, she is in many ways. She's a 40-year-old, but she's also very, very young. She's a child.
Yeah, she talks like a teenager.
You know, and she talks like a teenager. These actions are very much like a teenager. It doesn't surprise me that her new husband is 27. I think kind of like it sort of makes a good match. Like, I don't think she'd be a good match with someone who was in their 40s as well. and just the things that she finds interesting and fun and all of that. She is very stunted, but this is the part that's not talked about, because I was listening to this interview with the wife of Damon Eccles, one of the West Memphis Three.
Right.
She saw, the famous West Memphis Three, the three boys that were falsely imprisoned for
Murdering
18 years.
a classmate.
Murdering three young boys.
Oh, okay.
And it was a horrible, horrible thing. And these kids
Yeah.
were railroaded, and that's a whole other horrible story of took advantage of someone with low intelligence and got him to confess. It's a whole thing. But Damien Eccles, from ages 18 or 17, 18 to 36, 37, 38, was on death row, which means he was in a small box 20 some odd hours, 23 hours and a half a day. And so I was listening to an interview with the wife, and the wife talked about how it took a good 10 years for him to really, she said one time she walked around the corner, he just got triggered, almost on guard, because she said that for 18 years he had to be on guard, life or death. They talk about it in the documentaries about what happened to him in prison. Really awful things happened to him, and so you're on guard. You're on guard for, you've had to be on guard for 2 decades. And so it takes a long time for that to wear off. And I think that's what I keep saying. That's what we're seeing now is it's hard to explain it. It's a different kind of on guard, but it is this sort of, I think we are watching her in real time because of social media, try to make sense of everything that has happened. And sometimes she's angry, sometimes she's okay, sometimes she, right? This is why we see her emotions moving in so many different ways, because she's trying to process it all.
And she probably thought, I'm sure, that, as soon as I'm out from under this conservatorship, I can, be a mom again, because she missed out on the chance of really parenting her boys. I'm sure she thought she could just sort of pick up where she left off or something, and of course it doesn't work that way. And this is an extremely difficult situation for her sons that doesn't seem to be being handled very well. Her ex-husband is, I'm not quite sure what his end game here is, but he's putting them up to things, I think.
Yeah, I don't know quite what's going on there. I watched the 2 videos of her yelling at her kids, her sons, and I have to say, I've probably said those things too. I mean, I don't know, the boys were 12 and 13, mom's yelling at you. There's not a mom in the world that hasn't yelled or said things in that way that you really regret and that you wish you hadn't said, or you wish you hadn't raised your voice, or you wish you had said it in a different way. And I think this is one of the pieces about the world that we live in today of everything being videotaped. Right? Everything being recorded all the time, because to quote Dorinda, what is it? What is it?
Say it, forget it.
Write it, regret it.
You know
which
what?
I had never heard before.
That's words of wisdom.
Yes,
right there.
that is some words of wisdom, which is when we just sort of say things are let go, but when they're written and recorded, they stay in and they become permanent, and it's much harder for people to move on or well,
and again, let's have some empathy. Maybe her parenting skills aren't the best because she hasn't been allowed to parent.
Yes.
She hasn't been allowed to practice and learn how to parent. Because there was one time when she came into their room when they were in bed getting ready to sleep, and she wanted to put lotion on them.
Yeah, that I thought was
That
odd.
was strange, but again, probably because she had little to no parenting experience.
And I'm sure in that moment in time, she probably felt like, I'm just going to come in here and put this lotion on, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And then it becomes, we've all had those parenting moments where you think something's going to be real simple, and then it becomes a whole thing. And it's hard sometimes with your kid when they push back on you. You feel like, should I just relent? Should I push back? It's hard. So I think the other part of it too, and what she was saying in those videos was, you've got to respect me. I'm your mom. Treat me this way. And I think that's the part that's really tricky for everybody is she hasn't been allowed to be a mom this whole time. She has been supporting them. I think that's the other part of it too, is financially she's been supporting Kevin and everybody.
Supporting everybody.
But she hasn't had a chance to be a mom. She has a strained relationship with her boys. The boys, who I feel like are getting unnecessary criticism because like, oh, they didn't come to the wedding. And it was like, I think the sense that I get is I think, again, you don't forget Jamie Spears and the mother, I've forgotten her name, Lynn. These are also their grandparents. All of the people, this is Jamie Lynn's their aunt. These are family members. And I think that the sense that I get is the boys probably, nobody else in the family was invited except for the two boys.
And they don't know her husband.
And they don't know. So they're 15 and 16. So you're 15, 16-year-old boys.
Okay, I think they're younger than that, but.
No, they're 15, 16 now. So, but even if like last year, say they were 14 and 15, right? So 2 14 and 15-year-old boys where you have a strained relationship with your mother, you can't go with anybody that you know. They want you to go to a wedding at her house by yourselves. Like, my son barely leaves the goddamn house half the time. I can't get him to do anything. Or like, there's no way I could get, you just have to think about it from that perspective, being 14 and like, you don't want to go to your mom's wedding, right? No one else is going.
Also, it was a very bizarre wedding with
so
Madonna and Paris Hilton and, Drew Barrymore. I mean, it was quite it was strange.
But I think that the boys felt uncomfortable going because nobody else in the family was going, and I think they feel torn. I think these boys now feel torn between their two parents, between these two families. There's this family that they know and they care about, and you've got to understand that Kevin Federline is their father and been the primary caretaker of them. So these are kids. Like, even though you think, oh, they have all the money in the world, they're children, and they are doing what they need to do to survive. And what they need to do to survive is pick a parent and get through it. And that's what what one of the sons is saying. It's just kind of like, I'm just kind of trying to live my life here. And, I wish my mom the best, but I don't know her. I don't know her very well.
That's why I said that she thought she could just,
she thought
it was just going to go back to, well, it never was. I mean, she lost custody when they were babies.
But that was the other thing. One of my notes is she's trying to reconnect at really a tough age. 14, 15-year-old boys. Maybe if they were girls, it would be different. But I have a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old at home. It's like, this is a weird age for boys. It is not a great time to connect. And again, if they were 7 and 8, it would be very different. If they were 22 and 23, it would be very different. It's just the timing of it.
They don't
is
understand.
So hard. And so the thing is, the sons, their safe place is their life with Kevin, and going to Britney's wedding that didn't feel safe to them. And so anyway, I'm a firm believer that we're seeing her process her trauma. We're seeing her, figure out how to be in the world. And I just want to read this quote, which is like, trauma is not what happened, but what continues to happen because of the event, how to continue to respond to and how you continue to respond to the triggers of that event. So even though she's no longer in the conservatorship, doesn't mean that Britney feels safe.
Right.
Doesn't mean that she is whole or where she is. And so I think that what unfortunately is happening is, I don't think they should be using social media as a way of talking about all of this, but I think she feels like, my guess would be, is that I've had no voice for so long. Right. Now I'm going to have a voice, and she's processing it all. And we're seeing and I think people see her and think, oh my God, she's still a mess. She's still this, she's still that.
She's defending herself.
She's just trying to figure out how to find herself in all of this.
She's never been able to defend herself.
Yeah,
speak out. And in fact, when she addressed the court, there was a court hearing where she called in and, she addressed the court. And she was talking really fast because I think she was trying to get out. She felt like she wanted to get out everything she wanted to say. She was very coherent. Mm-hmm. She was very specific about what it was about the conservatorship that she felt was unfair. Mm-hmm. that was a pretty coherent statement. She's
Yeah.
very direct and, really had it together. But then you're right. Like, but what we're seeing now is now that it's over, now what? Now her thoughts, I think, are a lot more jumbled or, not
and
really clear.
She has all these pictures of her like half naked and put, all of that kind of stuff. And I know that people have feelings about that. And it's like, again, she wasn't allowed to express herself. Like, again, this is a girl that was sexualized at 16, 17.
Oh, earlier than that.
Yeah, sexualized very, very early, was, there for the male gaze at, whatever age she was. And then she was crazy and nutty. And then she was in this conservatorship. I think she's trying to kind of figure out, like, what's my sexuality? I want to pose. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be free. And I can understand her kids feeling a little embarrassed by that.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like there's anyone over at Kevin Federline's house who's sort of explaining to these boys why she's doing what she's doing. Well,
that's the thing that's such a shame is that
they can all afford therapy.
Yeah,
they should all be. These boys should be in therapy.
They should all be.
Kevin should be in therapy.
Exactly.
Everybody should be in therapy.
Everybody should be trying to work through this.
Yeah. Family therapy, all of it. They have no reason not to be working on all this stuff.
Yeah, and Kevin Federline, he really should be trying to be friendly and cooperative because, once those kids are 18, she doesn't have to give him any money. I heard that he gets like $60,000 a month.
Oh, wow. Well, I hope he's been saving that money.
Because he doesn't work. Because he now has, I think, a total of 6 children. Yeah. And he doesn't work. And he just lives off of Britney's money.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, hold on. But he couldn't really work because he had these 2 boys full time. I don't begrudge Kevin Federline for not working.
Oh no, I'm just saying he has. I'm not criticizing him for that. I'm just saying he has no other source of income. It's not like when this money gets cut off, he has a thriving dance career to go back to. Or something.
No. Hopefully he's been thinking through what he's going to do once those boys turn 18. But I feel like right now we're not seeing the best of Kevin Federline. Again, Kevin Federline was also a young guy when they met. Thrown into the spotlight, so much of this is young people making a lot of choices and decisions that have now affected them and are continuing to affect them. That's why, personally, nobody should be getting married, having children. I mean, this is the part about biology that's so hard, right? Is by the time you're ready to get married and have children, biologically it's harder to have kids, but personally, I think people need to wait as long as you can wait because it is so hard.
It's very hard. And that's the thing with Britney. I can't remember how old she was when she had her first child, but she wasn't, I don't know, like early 20s?
Yeah, she had to be 23,
mid-20s, somewhere in there, which, that's not that young. But if she had had a normal life and she had learned, she had gone through the stages of life in a normal way, then she could have handled it. But she just had no life skills. Yeah. Because she had never had a normal life.
I think that's the part that's hard is that you see her on stage and it's like, she can belt out all these tunes and she can dance for 2 to 3 hours and she can perform and she can put on a smiling face. But there's lots of things that she cannot do because that's not the thing that she's been investing her time and energy in because she was like a little worker machine, she was like a little, keep going, Britney, keep going, keep making money.
Yeah. And she did. And she was paying, she's basically been supporting her family all this time, her entire family. And,
Well, Britney, if you're out there, we care about you. We see you. You're going to get through this. You'll get to the other side. You'll get there.
So. I hope
you will get there.
I worry for her because it's just so sad what happened to her.
Well, and it's just, you see her now and you're like, okay, now this is great. You're 40. Go live. You want to see. That's why I hate seeing all of the back and forth of everything that's going on. It's like, God, I hope you're enjoying your life. I hope you're, I almost just want her to move to a foreign country or something and just be for a while and just live and enjoy her world. But obviously she wants to be near her children and all of that. So,
well, and I hope, it still bothers me to no end that this conservatorship was allowed to happen and went on for so long, because the court system is, they had to have periodic reviews of this. They had, they have court investigators who go and are supposed to investigate, see what's happening, and report back to the court. And this is just another example of, celebrity, where if you're a celebrity, like, the normal rules don't apply to you. If this was any other person, somebody along the way would have said, what is going on here?
yeah.
It would have been stopped. And in the wake of all of this, California has passed a law
Okay.
with some conservatorship reform, which probably doesn't go far enough. But basically, now a conservator of the estate over $1 million must register as a professional and get training. Conservatees have more control over their legal representation.
Okay. That's good.
And there's now a penalty of $50,000 for a conservator who has not acted in the best interest of their client.
Okay.
And
the Britney Spears clause.
The Britney Spears clause. And that's, like I said at the beginning, her father just committed egregious acts. And the fact that nobody said this isn't right. I don't know. It's amazing to me because, I've done conservatorship cases and they're not easy. It's not easy to get a conservatorship.
Yeah.
It has to be a very extreme situation and the court looks at it very closely. And for this to just kind of sail on through is weird.
Well, and it's also obviously, and they talk about this in the New York Times, framing Britney Spears show, is just the misogyny of, we watched Robert Downey Jr. melting down. That guy was melting down a good chunk of the 90s into the early aughts. We were watching Shia LaBeouf melt down. We're watching Alec Baldwin has had meltdowns.
Kanye West.
There we go. Kanye West is a great example of someone who is melting down. And I just saw this the other day because right now Kanye West is, battling it out with Kim Kardashian and posting all of their text messages. And someone was talking about the difference between how we see Kanye West's messages and how we see Britney's, messages to her family. Like, how dare, people take this attitude of Britney needs to be, better to her mom, or why is she so mad, all of this kind of stuff. And then Kanye can expose really private messages and just really kind of ridicule and laugh at his ex's mom. But that's okay because he's exposing the truth, or he's, he's a genius.
But it's not okay for Britney to be mad at her mom for not saving her.
Yeah.
What? How did her mom, her sister, her brother, maybe
I think
they're all on the payroll. Yeah.
I think the thing was, my guess would be, is I think that Lynn Spears didn't know the extent of how bad things were. But I also think it's one of those things where she probably could have investigated or fought a little bit more, but didn't push it because of the money. Because I think each of these people, I think they cared about her. I think they saw it, but I think they also probably were like, if I rock this boat, will I get thrown off the payroll? Like, if I try to say something or expose something or do something, like, where is my income? And this family has been so used to living off of her and her money that they were probably frightened to insert themselves. And then I think Lynn Spears goes back and tells herself, oh, well, this is really what's best for her. I mean, I think that's how she sleeps at night, is believing that what she did was the best for her daughter, when in actuality, I think there's another part of her that probably knows she should have interfered.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that instead of Lynn Spears she just keeps saying to Brittany, Brittany, I tried to do this, I tried to do that. It's like, you know what, Lynn, why don't you just say, you know what, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry this happened to you. I'm really sorry this happened to you. This should not have happened to you. And I'm
Sorry I didn't do more.
I'm sorry I didn't do more. I'm sorry. All of them, Jamie Lynn, I'm sorry. Just say you're sorry. Like, and in many ways, that's what she just wants you to acknowledge the truth. Acknowledge her truth. This is her truth. And all she wants you to do is acknowledge it because she wants to be seen and heard because she hasn't been for a long time. That's it.
Yes.
So we see you, Brittany.
We see you, Brittany. We love you.
Yes. You can get through this, girl.
Leave Brittany alone! Please.
All right. So, do you have anything else on Brittany, or are you good?
Oh, I think that's enough.
Okay. So, please hit the subscribe button, follow us, and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'll be getting TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff down the road. So, but right now, your 2 jobs are to subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star review. If you're not going to give us a 5-star review, please don't give us a review.
Yes, just don't listen again.
Just keep moving on.
If you don't like us, that's fine.
Yeah, but don't give us a terrible
No hard
review.
feelings. Just
all right. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Craving the coffee flavor you love, but without the caffeine? Kachava's got you covered with their newest coffee flavor. This all-in-one nutrition shake delivers bold, authentic flavor, crafted from premium decaffeinated Brazilian beans. With 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. Treat yourself to the flavor and nutrition your body craves. Go to Kachava.com and use code SMOOTHIE. New customers get 15% off their first order. That's KACHAVA.com, code SMOOTHIE.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.